Peace, family. We are back. MJ the Mastermind checking in. Once again, this is a video on the topic of reality creation, manifestation, and the law of attraction. All right. And we are back, man. We are reading from the Book of Wisdom again. All right. And I'm just going to pull the quote that we're going to talk about here today out. And, this is based on a conversation I had last night with my business partner. And I'll elaborate on that. But a problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that it occurs. A problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that it occurs. A problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that it occurs. Now, the reason this came up is because I was talking to my partner last night and we were talking about the knowledge gap. So a lot of times in life, we're not able to grow, advance, evolve. And it's just because we don't know. We just don't know what we need to know at that time. Whether it's we just don't have the right information, the right guidance, the right support. And what we have to understand is that the reason that you have the problem in the first place is a reflection of who you currently are. Okay? Our life is always a reflection of who we are at the end of the day. I truly believe that you don't get out of life what you want, you get out of life who you are. And what does that mean? That means that you can want anything that you want in the world. Like, you can have these big goals, these big visions, and these big dreams. But what's really going to determine if you actually accomplish those things is who you become, like who you are, your mindset, your thoughts, your habits, your frequency, your energy, and your vibration, and all of these things, right? So we go through life. Right. I would like to think that everybody watching this is always in a process of growth, a process of development. But there comes a point in our journey where we have problems, we have stumbling blocks, we have halts in that process of growth. And what you have to realize is that sometimes you're just not going to be able to figure it out just based on who you are currently. Like, based on the knowledge that you have currently, based on the wisdom that you have currently, you're just not going to be able to figure it out. So when it says a problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that it occurs, it means you're not going to be able to solve that problem until you evolve, until you grow into a better version of yourself. Now, that could just be a process of internal development. Or sometimes you just need to get access to the right information, the right content, and the right frequencies. Now, let's take, for example, like for me, right? Like years ago, I had a rat race problem where, I was just going to a job, working long hours, no freedom, no flexibility. And in order for me to grow past that, I had to raise my level of consciousness. So what did I start to do? I started to focus a lot more on my personal development. I started to read more. I started to change the things that I was consuming. Remember this, y'all. Like, you become what you consume. Okay? You become what you consume. So it's very, very important that you're consuming things on a day-to-day basis. Reading, videos, podcasts, different things that can shift your level of consciousness. All right? Because if you just continue being the same version of yourself, if you just continue consuming the same type of information, the same type of content, you may not be able to solve that problem that you may be having. That could be a income problem. That could be a relationship problem. It could be, there's so many different types of problems. But what you need to do is you need to start shifting your consciousness. And the easiest way to shift your consciousness is just change the things that you consume. Okay? Change what you're consuming on a day-to-day basis. Like, we're in the era of content, right? So everybody's posting content, everybody's creating content. There's so much things that are trying to steal your attention, right? We're in the age of information and attention. Attention is the new currency. Attention is the new data. So there's all of these things that are trying to take your attention, right? And consume that. But if you just continuously are consuming things that are not in alignment with who you're going to become, or the vision that you have of yourself, then ultimately you're not going to be able to progress through the problems that you're having in your life, because you're the same person, right? So again, a problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that it occurs. So how do you shift your consciousness? One is you shift what you're consuming. Okay, what changed my life was I started to read a lot of books. I've read hundreds of books in my life, 99% of them on the topic of, personal development, manifestation, and things like that. And I started to consume different things. I started to watch videos of some of the best speakers in the world. And I invested in mentors, y'all. Now, this is not a plug. I don't have a mentorship right now. I stopped my mentorship. So I'm not trying to plug a mentorship, but it's very, very important to invest into yourself. I've invested over 6 figures into myself in mentorship and the right information, the right wisdom, and that has helped shift my consciousness to be able to solve the problems that I may have had at that time, right? And that's what it was able to help me escape, a career that I just wasn't satisfied in. For those that don't know, I come from a 6-figure engineering career. I left that career to pursue entrepreneurship, pursue business, and pursue what I was passionate about. But it was my mentors, it was the content I was consuming, it was the books that I read that was able to shift my consciousness to solve that rat race problem, to solve that 9-to-5 problem that I was having. And that's just been the sauce that works. It's just continuously pouring into yourself, consuming the things that are necessary for you to shift your consciousness, and at the same time investing into mentors that can also help to shift your consciousness, right? Because again, you don't get out of life what you want, you get out of life who you are. Okay, so I urge everybody to seek out the right information. And again, this originated from a conversation that, like, I'm trying to solve problems in my business right now. And in order for me to solve those problems, what I'm doing is I'm consuming information, I'm consuming content and wisdom from other sources that have already achieved what I have achieved. Okay? And I'm consuming things that are helping to shift my mindset, shift my ideas, and shift my thought process, which is all a part of our consciousness. Okay? So if you have a problem that you're experiencing in your life right now, the reason that you continue to have that problem is because you're approaching that problem from the same level of consciousness that originated the problem. Okay? So what you need to do is to shift your thought process, shift your perspective. Perspective drives performance. How you view what you do will always affect how you do what you do. Okay, remember that. Perspective drives performance. How you view what you do will always affect how you do what you do. So if you're able to get the right perspectives, the right mindsets, the right ideas, which ultimately shifts your consciousness, it puts you in a better position to be able to solve the problems that you have. Okay? And this goes back to what I was speaking on the last video. Whereas, like, we're trained and designed to continuously have the same thoughts every day, right? Because our minds and our bodies are trained to conserve energy. So it's easier on your system to just have those same thoughts that, like I said, we have the same 90% of the thoughts that we had yesterday, the same thoughts that we're going to have today. But if you continuously think the same way, how do you ever expect to shift your consciousness and be able to solve the problems that you're having in your life? It's a recipe for failure. Okay? And that's why a lot of people in life, they never end up advancing, growing, or evolving. Right? They're the same version of themselves for decades. And I'm sure every one of us has a friend, a family member, a cousin, or somebody that we can reference that they've never really grown. And they've been the same person. Right? And you could probably see that they continue to have the same problems because their consciousness has never changed. So I urge you all to shift your consciousness, right? And you know, part of this is like really giving you guys, sorry if there's a helicopter flying by, so if it's loud, I apologize. But part of this is really giving you guys tangible steps, right? The first tangible step is to change what you consume on a day-to-day basis. If you have a money problem, you should be consuming things that shift your consciousness and your perspective around money. If you have a relationship problem, you should be consuming things that urge you to look at things from a different lens to help you become a better version of yourself, and how you can be in relationships, or things that help you to just be better understanding of yourself and other people that you may be entering into a relationship with or may already be in a relationship with, right? So the first step is to change what you're consuming. The next step is to invest into yourself, right? Invest into yourself, y'all. You know, I'm a huge advocate of mentorship, training. Invest into yourself, y'all. It's going to help to shift your mindset, shift your perspective, which ultimately shifts your consciousness and allows you to be able to solve the problems that you are having in your life. All right? So, again, a problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that it occurs. You don't get out of life what you want. You get out of life who you are. And there was one more, but I forgot what I said earlier. All good. I appreciate the engagement, y'all. I appreciate, my new followers. I got some good feedback on the last video. So like, comment, subscribe. It helps me a lot. And, I'm going to keep these videos coming. Again, the goal is just to continue to raise everybody's consciousness, awareness, hone into your inner power. And again, this channel isn't all about, just the esoteric side. Like, I'm a huge proponent of, like, you actually got to put in the fucking work, right? Like, you have to put in the work, guys. Like, a huge part of this is still being disciplined. A huge part of this is still taking consistent action, right? A huge part of this is having the right mindset, right? So we're gonna bring all of these pieces together as we continue to grow. But again, I hope this was helpful for you all. Like, comment, subscribe. I love y'all. MJ the Mastermind checking out.